Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Meet the Global Leader episode 7. Uh, I would like to show our gratitude to our today's guest, Sana from Pakistan, who has more than 15 years experience in entrepreneurship and development ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem in Pakistan. And today we have our another session chair, Mr. Aman, who is the chairman and CEO of School of Entrepreneurship Development. Welcome to our session, Ms. Sana and Mr. Aman.
Thank you, Beb, for having me, and I'm excited to see what's happening on your part of the world and what
Yeah,
I.
before going to our main session, I would like to introduce myself. This is Mahbub. I am volunteering as Chief Marketing Officer for School of Entrepreneurship Development. And the objective of this session is, we try to share the experiences of experienced person with our audiences who are mostly university students, and we are trying to create a knowledge economy in our country where like consultation and research, this is the main key factors. So that's why we try to like invite people who have expertise in these areas, like entrepreneurship, business, innovation, leadership, and we try to learn their journey and story through what we try to develop ourselves, and we try to give our audience a glimpse about what people are doing abroad. So yeah, let's go to our main session. It would be great to first know about you, if you can introduce with us in a brief, Sana.
Okay, yeah. So, hi everyone, and thank you for having me, and thank you for being with us on the session today. So, my name is Sana Mela, and I belong to Pakistan. I'm based out of Lahore. I was born in Lahore. I come from an agrarian background, but I was super passionate about entrepreneurs and, like how do we change the dynamics from farming, someone who comes from that background, to someone who wants to commercialize things and do more. And that's how I met with the idea. So I toyed with it and I learned a lot about it. And when I did my undergrad, there was not a lot happening. The lingo of what we hear now, all this startup lingo, all of this was completely absent. And I was lucky that I found a good mentor in my my business school dean, the rector, the head of the college. I went to him and I said, why don't we have XYZ? If I want to do something, why aren't you teaching me that? So I kind of got, I was lucky I got an opportunity to work with my own academic institute, and that gave me a lot of confidence because I worked with amazing teachers. I had a mentor, and my boss was somebody who had worked across the globe on the idea of small businesses and entrepreneurship development. So it was a good 3-4 years of constant learning, and I remember that it was 8 a.m. till like 8 p.m., sometimes 10. But I loved what I was doing because I completely enjoyed the fact that I'm adding something. So I wanted to go back to the point of when you talk about knowledge economy and
Yeah,
entrepreneurship, and everybody's talking about it, and a lot of people have a lot to say, but I just want to simplify it for all of us. So let's say, if you're college going, or if you're a student and you want to do more in life, what is the first step that you want to take? You look at basically you look at your own, your government, your policies, your ecosystem, your business environment, and you say, okay, maybe this is a pocket where I can do something. But then, everybody has a different personality.
that's
If you're the kind of person who wants to be an enabler, then you say, okay, I want to understand how's the culture around my country, and how can I, like the work that you guys are doing, which is fantastic because I completely understand how much
thank you.
South Asian economy is needed, because
Yes,
we don't have any government policies. It's sad, but we don't have a lot of conducive policies or frameworks that kind of support this ecosystem. Or so in the absence of such policies and frameworks, private sector steps in. People like you, passionate people like me in my past, who were like, I want to do this. I want to understand why is it not happening at the speed of the other people. When I was with Lahore School of Economics, when we started on the journey of entrepreneurship development, I was studying a lot of content and I was reviewing a lot of policies and papers and the events that were happening back in 2007, 8 till 11. And honestly, I was constantly wondering, okay, India is doing fantastic stuff. There's so much happening elsewhere also, but why is it that we're not doing anything? Is it that what's wrong? Is there something wrong with us, or we just don't know it? So that means that we need to really catch up with the world. So I think it starts at with the fact that we need to ground ourselves with the feeling that we need to really learn. I think the world is doing fantastic things. I mean, whatever bug, there's so much, and as individuals, and I think we completely um, I want to say this because social media has become very generic as a dialogue, so it's very hard to communicate something meaningful. When it people who in our society, South Asian economies have very um, different issues. They have to fight a cultural barrier, they have to fight a mindset.
As they belong to
Right.
mostly middle class people,
Yes,
maybe.
and it's not easy because their parents have gone through a lot of struggle. They've seen partition, they've seen loss of different kinds. So for them and their parental culture, it's not very easy to say, "Hey, I'm just going to not take a certain route, and then I'm going to do this in life." So I think I had seen that struggle, and I'd seen that struggle with a lot of other students and friends and colleagues and seniors and juniors around me, and it's not so easy. So and parents are also right, because our economies are not like, everything is not
Yeah.
insured, there's hardly anything, so you
Really, really, they actually once wish that their kids so that they can lead a secured life.
yes,
Basically,
exactly.
entrepreneurship is actually very challenging,
This
and
challenging.
they have to go with lots of ups and downs. But
Absolutely. And
parents don't want to see their kids that they are in struggling, they are in problem, in crisis. They
yeah,
never wish to see such kind of situation. That's why they actually put their kids so that they get engaged with jobs and others.
absolutely. So it's very interesting that academia has helped me understand the ecosystem, the layers of the ecosystem around Pakistan. And and I do want to share on your platform that Pakistan has different provinces and all of them have their own culture. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised that if I hear that in different cities in Bangladesh you have your own economy, and some of it is textile based, some of this is agrarian based. So all of that has its own culture, and I'm sure that what we really need to do as economies and as individuals is to capitalize on those. I think what
Right.
we're not doing is we're not capitalizing on our own assets, but we're also trying to catch up with the Silicon Valley because it's really cool, and the lingo is cool, and all the funding and the tech and the VC culture looks fantastic. It is in many ways, but you
Right.
know, um, so somewhere there is a disconnect, and I think
Disconnection.
and I think the disconnect is coming from that we're not understanding what we're trying to address because we have too many problems. So
Right.
I think we have so much room to play, but we need to be very careful as students and as individuals on the amount of playroom that we create in our lives.
Yes.
I think it's not also, and I do want to share this with a lot of responsibility. I see sometimes people sharing Steve Jobs quotes and saying, hang out, sorry, drop out is
Drop
a
out.
thing. It's actually not. You're not Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, and we're not operating in those economies. We don't have that kind of support systems backing us. So let's not live in that frame of mind. We really need to work a lot more
Work.
hard and really stick to the schools and really understand. I mean, I'm not saying just stick to the schools, but really develop our skills, and it's a very competitive world.
Yeah. Education basically
Right.
shapes our, like mindset and our thinking process.
Yes,
That
definitely.
is very necessary.
So
Absolutely.
I am excited to see that. I actually want to understand. In fact, help me understand before I say more on anything. That I don't believe in comparing ecosystems. I feel every ecosystem has its own strength and barriers. So when let's say you guys as institutes have set up this initiative, and you're making this effort, something has pushed you to do this. And
Right.
I believe one reason is the absence of um, the entrepreneurial framework in your political system also. But as an individual or as a student or as a young person, what pushes you to do this? What pushes you to put three people together so other people can say this?
So I'd like to invite Mr. Aman to session chair to contribute here.
Sure.
Basically, that ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem, actually, this is basically shaped up by the society as well as the country government also.
Yeah.
So based on the thinkings, thought process, visions, all those things basically shape up the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yes.
Uh, the educational institutes are also work based on the guideline of government as well as what the society demands, what the industry demands. So
Right.
these are actually the things. Another thing, Mr. Mahbub already told that the people in South Asian countries, basically we are from middle class families. We
Yes.
take, if we say that our economic standard. So we basically expect a secured life.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurship basically it's much more challenging.
Yeah.
So in that case, you see, 95% people, if you see the study or statistic, 95% people of the world even,
Yeah.
they want to lead basically a secured life.
Yeah.
Only 5% people are just work to take challenges.
True.
So in that case, you see, it's not a scenario in South Asian countries that we are lagging behind in the way of developing our entrepreneurship. If you see in first world country, you will see today they are switching their jobs. Today they are working here, tomorrow they are working there. This is basically a common scenario. But
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, how many peoples are getting developed from Silicon Valley? What is the percentage? You just have to think.
Yeah.
The percentage is not more than 5%. Lots of ideas are being generated in Silicon Valley every day, but how many ideas are getting success in the world?
Yeah.
The percentage is not so high. So in our country also, same case, that people actually are much more try to lead a comfortable life. So that's why they are taking education, and they are trying to get basically a government job because it is highly secured,
Yes.
and then they go for bank jobs and other
Yes.
kinds of jobs. So this is the fact. And in universities and colleges, basically the teachers, uh, though it's a system, because you know that it's a social system, what the parents push and what the society push, basically the students and the people, young people, shape up their dreams even based on the expectation of the society, what the
Yes.
society expects. If you see South Asian countries, the person who are basically getting government job, they are highly admired in the society. They are respected very
I
much.
Yes, I hear you very much. I think, Aman, thank
Uh,
you for sharing that with me because I think, and going back to the culture again and the security of culture. So one of the projects I did was around was for the schooling for the tier two schools across Pakistan, where we wanted to introduce the concept of entrepreneurial development through simulation, and this was done through Princess Trust England. And the idea was to open the minds of the children, introduce them to the idea of entrepreneurship, and say, okay, if you it's okay if you can't be a doctor or an engineer, because in Pakistan that's like the standard, right? Everybody wants you to be a doctor or an engineer because it's safe. And I think it's the same for India, and it's the same for
Yeah.
Bangladesh, because again we go back to our roots, and we say, okay, this is secure. And I mean, and again the
Company will take care for us for
yeah.
life.
company.
So I
Here we have some gap of understanding. Basically, still we are lagging behind in definition of entrepreneurship.
def-
You have to now come to the definition of entrepreneurship, basically you have to think about the factors of production.
Yeah.
Just see factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
This is the fundamental factor of production, and which contributes 60% in the production. So it does it, whether the person may be a doctor, engineer, lawyer,
We'll
whatever,
expand to that.
he has every scope to become an entrepreneur from his
Absolutely.
profession.
Absolutely. And
So
thank you for saying that.
if anyone become a social scientist or political scientist, he has also a scope to become an entrepreneur, because you see, if he develop a farm, research farm or like that,
Yeah.
and he creates some values to the society,
Yeah.
he delivers some values to the society, these are also entrepreneurship. So discipline actually is not a fact. From any discipline, anyone can be an entrepreneur. Just he need an entrepreneurial mindset. He need some capability to create some extra value, to deliver some extra value to the society. This is basically entrepreneurship. So
True. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that we're on the same page for that, because I think this is what I was going to come towards. That so the program we ran across Pakistan, and so across regions we had very different responses, and this is where the cultural
Barriers, differences maybe.
yes, and so interestingly, we start from Gilgit Baltistan, which is on top in the north, and it's not typically connected to the internal Pakistani culture. And I had seen girls and super enthusiastic, like they want to be doctors, they want to be lawyers, they want to be media persons, and their spoken English is fantastic, and their confidence is like, hey, I want to do this, and I want to also grow corn, and I want to also sell corn, but I also want to be a lawyer. And I'm just like,
right,
oh my god, where, I mean, wow, fantastic. But then you come down to the south, and then and what I'd seen as trend is that there is a force from the female side, like the girls are like super enthusiastic, they want to do so much, and that's across Pakistan. It's like every other girl is like, yeah, I want to do this and I want to do this. The scary part was that I was a little concerned with the boys. I mean, maybe it takes them time to think, but the fact that the enthusiasm was kind of low compared to the and this is first hand experience, because I mean, we ran this for 3 years across Pakistan, and I found that very interesting. That is this coming from a culture, or is it or is why is it that the girls want to do more? Why is it that they're always out there? But so one that takeaway was very interesting, and then the other one, like I said, in the north, like you hear all these very interesting things, but then you had cities like Faisalabad and Sialkot, and extremely business oriented cities with like strong business hubs and cultures and family backgrounds. The boys from those cities are extremely sharp and and very clear ideology of how they want to progress in their life, and or little something about. And I found that very interesting, because maybe that the family that they're coming from, or they're part of city or as a culture, maybe that culture is shaping their thought processes like that. And it's very interesting, because if you come to Lahore, the only city in the entire country where parents were so particular that they didn't even want their kids to be part of such programs. They're like, oh, no, 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 no. Lahore is the academic hub of Pakistan, right? So everybody is like, coming to Lahore to study, to study, to study. And it's so interesting that Punjabi parents are super like controlling about their kids education, because they're like, no, our kids cannot score less than A plus. So we don't care about extracurriculars, or we don't care about, I'm sorry, but we don't care about this right now. And I had never seen this eye to eye, because I was like, oh my god, this is fantastic. So very very interesting experiences. I mean, some cities were literally like, we don't really care. And Karachi, being Karachi, it's cosmopolitan, it's huge, it's the educational experience of Karachi is so, it's so interesting, because it brings so many different flavors. And I think we had so much to learn from the educational systems there, because some of them had incorporated entrepreneurial cultures in a way that once a student graduates, they'll think big, like just what you said, that even if you're a doctor or an engineer or whatever you are, whatever faculties you grow, you can be an
Absolutely.
entrepreneur. So I think schooling has a lot, has a huge role to play. And then tier 2, tier 3 schools are where our masses are, and most of them, the teachers are not so passionate, I mean, they're just doing their thing and saying,
Well,
okay.
it's an important thing that you will find in South Asian countries. Basically, teachers are not emphasizing on entrepreneurship development.
Yeah.
They are teaching theories, models, and other things, but they don't make the students understand that using their knowledges in their specific fields like engineering schools or arts schools, science schools, these are basically can help to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
This is a gap in South Asian countries
it is.
because teachers can make the students understand. So basically, this is a scope. You can become an entrepreneur. You can create more value to the society. So,
So sorry, please continue.
so this is basically a problem for South Asian countries. But recently, you will see that uh, the entrepreneurship has become a buzzword in South Asia. In
Yeah.
India, you will see that lots of entrepreneurial bootcamp. In Bangladesh, you will see lots of
Yes,
youth
I
symposium, uh, expo, and boot camps. Young people are currently much more aggressive because you see that they are connected with the world
yeah.
actually through the internet and their mobile phones. Just whatever happening in any part of the world, they're getting news within a second. So it is basically making the young people to become more aggressive.
Yeah.
So this is
Absolutely.
basically helpful. You will see that in Corona pandemic, the first world countries where are struggling with COVID, but I have seen in my country, the young people basically are not staying at home. They are much more aggressive. Those who have lost their job in pandemic situation, they have become entrepreneurs. It's
Yes.
an interesting thing.
Very
Interesting thing.
pandemic in itself is, I think, a completely, it's such a
Different
fantastic.
push.
Yeah, it's
Right.
it's like it's teaching all of us of how to live and how to, engage and mesh within this entire world and the change of the world. So it's so, thank you for highlighting that. And so going back to the, so I'll move on from the educational experience part. I think so. We do agree that, organizations like yourself can play a role in advocacy. So advocacy is a very interesting term. That yes, there is policy making, and you constantly have to work with the government on that end. But then in the private sector, or where you have direct control or direct access, you can talk about these things on how the educational curriculum could be, a little, could have tits and bits added to it in a way that people would understand cultural, entrepreneurial culture in some way. And so, and as somebody who's very passionate about Pakistan's entrepreneurial ecosystem, I never really, so I'm more of a, my personality was always more of a connector and an enabler and connector enabler. And in my learning, I felt I could use my time to test out a lot of ideas. So my first phase of life was a lot of testing with like government institutes, with creating initiatives. So what, let's say, with NGOs, with say non-governmental organizations. So how do we play with social enterprise? So I briefly did a program with INSEAD in 2011. And so when I came back, there was, I wanted to do impact capital and social entrepreneurship. But it's so funny, people would make fun of me and say, okay, first spell entrepreneurship for me. So from 2007 till at least 2015, all I was doing was, spelling entrepreneurship and saying, hey, this is a word and don't make fun of me. So,
That's
uh,
true.
but
That's
it's
true.
so
We
interesting.
had the same experience.
Yes, I can very well imagine. But then suddenly this tech wave emerged and it kind of took over everything. So with the social entrepreneurship learning, my learning was that the only way to again build things was with academia, because the private sector was doing CSR, corporate social responsibility, but then, that's really not adding to social entrepreneurship. And, the fight was that why don't you allocate the money to like developing and, so it was a very
Right.
contentious conversation, and it was a lot of advocacy in the process. And then I decided to work with academia and build some accelerators and see, okay, how can we support whatever that we can support. I can't keep fighting everybody's fight, and that's something I had to teach myself. It's been a challenge with me, that
Right.
wars are not mine, and you got to choose your fight. So I guess you learn with time, so I want to be
Yeah.
very open about that. So yeah, so I think building those accelerators was very interesting, because then I could play with what's happening in the government, and working in different areas. So, for example, Sindh in IBA, and then Lahore, LSE, and LUMS, and then between all of this, there's KPK, and so creating like an entrepreneurial team in a way that I could do research and I could conduct research and understand the entrepreneurial behavior across Pakistan, and then develop programs based on that. So I think that I could only do with academia and with a group of students, because again, the tech lingo wasn't really there. And so I think I was blessed to have learned a lot. I think the most amount of learning came from working with academia, because I could deep dive in the roots and see what was happening. And it was less about presenting and being out there, but more about learning and doing. And that taught me a lot, because again, it taught me a lot about the varying cultures, and the role of women, and how we're not talking about it at all, and how there's literally no policy. And so it was just an eye opener in a lot of ways, pretty much with what you guys are doing at the moment. And
Yes. Sorry, just for interruption.
yes, please.
The School of Entrepreneurship is like such an organization which is basically working as an incubator as well as accelerator.
Yes,
We
fantastic.
are basically supporting the young entrepreneurs just to help to develop their ventures.
Yeah. I think that's a great model, honestly, because I've never really understood incubator, accelerator. How do we, the need to do it separately? Um, Again, it varies from the agenda to agenda. I mean, I think what you're doing is probably going to work great, because um, and it could have different results also, because then we've seen when the incubator wave kind of sprung, we had a lot of incubators coming up. So most of them were governments. And then the government suddenly took interest and said, okay, the world is doing this, and suddenly we are not anywhere on the map. And then we want to be on the map. So then the government put in money, and then Lahore became, the hub in a way, that Punjab Institute and Dr. Umar Saif used to head it. And then, Lahore's ecosystem, the tech ecosystem is very different to Karachi's and Islamabad. So it's very interesting that Lahore became the hub, um, and the incubation acceleration programs kind of sprung everywhere, and then the money was thrown in, and then it became like really, it became the coolest thing to do, because oh my god, you're a founder of a startup, you pitched
Yep.
here, and then you pitched from one incubator to the other incubator to the other incubator. So what it did was, I think so.
That sound like a, Silicon, Valley guy because of the promotion. Like if you're a founder of a startup, oh, you're from Silicon Valley. That
Yeah,
was the theory.
it was a lot of power in our heads, thinking, oh my
Yeah,
god, we're CEOs, and oh my god, we're founders. And but there's a lot. I mean, I think it kind of played with people's minds in a lot of ways.
exactly. Going to do the exact work or solving the solution, people are like busy with the flashy
Yeah,
things,
because
posh things.
so I think the flashy part played a role in both ways. So if I was to say that the advocacy that it did was that the amount of people who kind of came in, at least pitched, at least tried and tested the ideas. At least that part we have to give credit to our ecosystem, that at least it opened avenues to people. At least if you had an idea, you could just go somewhere and say, hey, I have an idea, and someone could give you feedback and you can take it or not take
Exactly.
it. So I think that's a great shift that we've seen in South Asia. I'm not sure what's happening in Bangladesh on that, but I do believe that we're pretty much on the same page. In
Same
Pakistan,
page.
this started happening in the 2013, 12, 13 onwards. It was a layer of incubators, accelerators, and the government throwing in money, and then the private sector, and then every other academic institute saying, oh, we have an incubator. So it was very interesting because it was allowing a lot of people, and then a lot of aid money was also coming. So I think most of us were, most people were really confused about how to spend that money, and so maybe there was a
That's
lot of
true.
wastage. I think that what you can learn from us is how not to waste money on programs, and how not to give founders just like small little tiny amount of money, because that's really not going to, that this maybe it's not okay to make a generic comment on that, but I think that it made people comfortable in their skin, and then they kind of, some of them kind of dropped the ideas, and some of them got picked up the other organization,
Demotivated on the way.
and I think very few stuck by, which is fine, which is part of the entrepreneurial journey. And I think all of us learned our own way. But going back to the understanding of incubation acceleration, and I do feel that uh, we didn't have a lot of regulating bodies, and we didn't have a lot of funding bodies. We hardly had any. I mean, in the last 2 3 years, we've now have a lot of venture capitalists and angel investors, and um, but these are people coming from established businesses, and who would park some of their money and say, okay, we could do this for the startups. But 10 years ago, or at least 5 years ago, or even like the last 3 years, it was very hard for them to understand that Unilever says, okay, why should I fund this startup? But then Unilever has started to understand that Unilever is too big and they can't really change their culture. But what they can do is maybe adopt a startup and say, okay, this can do this for me. So I think our model needs to be, and that's my assumption. But I think that South Asia, the corporates have a lot of business, and the startups can actually give them the products that they need, because that's where the business models are. So the business model isn't like, oh, I think we should do that because there's not a lot of customer, and then most people do not have a lot of marketing expenditure. So I think this is where a lot of startups didn't really work. That maybe the ideas were fantastic, but but everybody was not a Kareem, because they didn't have that kind of money backing it up. And
Exactly.
so I think the way you marketing behavior requires a lot of money, and so we've not been successful with a lot of ideas because we were not putting the money in that marketing behavior also. And some trends are cultural, like when you talk about health tech, for instance, our cultures are not really like, okay, let's tap on the app and then we will. No, we first call 10 other people in our family, I'm assuming it's the same everywhere, and say, which doctor should I go to? So the transition, the behavior has taken some time,
Changed.
and,
Right.
and COVID is kind of changing everything. So it's very interesting. I think what we're now seeing in Pakistan is a lot of e-commerce, and it's fantastic the amount of food and delivery businesses that have done well in the last 2 years. It's amazing. So it's a lot of transition curve for a lot of existing startups also. So um so i, I mean I think incubation acceleration really needs to the real job that they have is to prime the ecosystem. And what they can do is just holistically work around the ecosystem. But if they start making entrepreneurs, and one challenge that I've had with our local incubator accelerator is that, again, you're very seasonal. So what you're saying is that this cohort will open, and then the deadline is this, and then 3 years, 3 times in the year you can pitch, or maybe twice in the year. But what if I have a fantastic idea and I want to work around it? Why don't you open it throughout the year? why don't you let people come and play? And I think some of them did that over time, but I think we should just leave it open and tell people to just experiment with the idea, keep experimenting till, I think we need at least 6 months to 8 months to a year to at least experiment with the idea before we reach the idea of the startup. And I think that's missing in South Asia again, because we have very little funding when it comes to research. There's hardly any product research which is backing up with data and finances. This is where again a lot of startups were not uh, doing too great. And I feel like if we just as ecosystem enable the startups to push in, you know put numbers and put actual the actual data sets to it, then we can create promising startups. And I mean, even if they don't make too big, they will create some value in some way. Otherwise it's just like making a presentation in an MBA class, and that's about
Right.
it. Yeah. So I mean, I could go on and on, but you're most welcome to interject.
So, okay, one thing, just a question to you.
Yeah.
How many startups are sustaining for more than 2 years? Because young people are basically want to be a CEO, want to be a founder, like that. It's a fashion. It has become a fashion in present days. I
Yeah.
am a startup owner. I am a founder. I am my own CEO, like that. These are actually buzzword and a trend.
Yes. And that's
But
a good.
it's basically difficult to sustain the position.
Yeah.
So, how many startups are sustaining for more than 2 years, based on your experience? Can you say?
That's a very good question. So I was doing a blog on entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it's called Perspective. It's still running. So I was collecting a lot of data for startups, and so it's a great question. And I don't want to misquote a number, but from the trends, what it shows was that at least 70 to 80%, or I could go up to 90%, had died in the last in the first year or so. And the 10% that were moving forward were finding it hard uh, to develop traction, to develop funding. So there were seasons. I mean, some years where the funding came in and the policy kind of changed, and some new angel investors or VC funds came in. You would see some major injections, but not too many. And again, it's because so I should in fact I should have had a number with me, but I don't have one, because let's say we had in a year, there are many different reports, but sector wise some of them did really well. Again, food and delivery business and e-commerce kind of continued, and for a while there was IoT became a thing, but
Yeah.
then sustaining IoT, the only way to sustain that was that if there's existing companies,
Infrastructure.
if the existing companies would buy the product, then then. So what I want to say is that maybe 2 years or onwards there were a lot of startups, but the only way they would sustain was that either they would get picked up by existing businesses as their own like separate product line, or some other company would invest in them and change their names, etc. But the survival rate is really low. And that's
Very
yeah, it's really low. And with time, in the last 2 3 years, I think the dynamics have completely changed, because now we see a different ecosystem with more players in the ecosystem, with a lot more readiness from the corporate sector,
right.
because that didn't exist previously. They were just like, this is not our area. But now we will see that there's a lot of readiness from them. So they're looking at products, they're constantly looking at what's happening in logistics. So if I'm Unilever and Engro, I'm looking at what's happening at agri-tech or food, or so I'm their teams are constantly looking, okay, if you're doing something interesting, maybe I'll just pick you up. So that's one interesting change I've noticed, and maybe that's something that you guys can also work on, because I think the corporates need consistent engagement with the startups, and that's where Momentum kind of played a very interesting role, which was developing a technology event across Pakistan. and it was bringing together the local tech ecosystem and the foreign tech ecosystem and putting everybody together and saying, hey, I just want to put Pakistan on the map and say we do exist, but where do we go from here? So there was product exhibitions happening, and there was a lot of dialogue happening, and again it was opening Pakistan to different avenues. So the 2017, 18, 19, the curve kind of changed in different ways, because in 17 nobody was really listening, and then Imran Khan, said, no, I want to be here, so it became a thing, and then VCs from Canada and US, and they were all traveling to Pakistan for the first time. So it was a very interesting curve for us, and we had never seen that kind of activity before. So I think making one national event is not enough, but because the government wasn't doing, and people like me who were really passionate found people who wanted to do it, so it became a good team, but it was really hard to pull it off and say, really hard to define what the best model was. Honestly, there was a lot of discrepancy in it. But moving on, 2018 and 19, then we had tech companies like Facebooks and Amazons and Google saying, hey, we'll also be there and we'll support you in opening your ecosystem. And then we'll talk about our products and how we want to invest in Pakistan and how we are looking at your ecosystem, which is very interesting, which is what we wanted. Because the
Right.
idea, the idea isn't that you keep saying that, oh, we've invited the Facebooks of the world to Pakistan. The idea was that what can they do for our ecosystem?
Right.
So I think there was some fantastic opportunities shared. A lot of organizations met each other, and that meet and greet in those 2 3 years opened avenues for a lot of other organizations, government, private. And again, when you are at that kind of an organization playing that kind of a role, you don't always take the opportunity. You don't say, I did this, I did this. You say, hey, my job was to open the gates for everybody. That was my job, because the government isn't doing it. But doing
Right.
it as a founder and as somebody who's executing it had a lot of burnout also. It had its own high, but uh, it's a lot of
Yeah, that's
responsibility.
true.
So I think all of these things need to go hand in hand, like your ecosystem, the policy making. But let's say if you were to talk about Bangladesh, then what is the event that Bangladesh, what is the sexiest event that Bangladesh sells, where Sana should go and say, hey, I'm going to meet all the ecosystem? Why is there one event? So and then we had another one, 021, that Jahara does, and it was fantastic event. It was the quality of the program is great, and a lot of people from across the globe travel for it. So I mean, again, like in other incubator accelerators were doing their own independent programs. So if you say that in the last 10 years what has happened is at least that Pakistan was opening its gates in multiple ways for the local ecosystem and for the world, saying, hey, we're doing this, why don't you come, why don't you come? And because of our security issues, we've
Right.
had to work extraordinarily to do that one thing, that the other people were not fighting with. We had terrorism and we had security always sitting on our head. People always wondering, hey, but do I travel to Pakistan? So that kind of that that was a thing to deal with, and I think that we've all been so passionate because we said no. We What you're talking to me, this is Pakistan, and there are billions of other people, and there's lots of opportunity, and just this tag that unfortunately that we had to deal with for some years, it doesn't define us. So I think we really, really, that's where the need for putting Pakistan came for someone like me. That okay, maybe policy and research and culture and all this is fine, but what's the point if people around the world are not looking at you? So to put
Right.
Pakistan on the map, I think momentum happened, and so my journey has been very interesting. It's kind of very exploratory, but it opened avenues as and when, and I was grateful that I got the opportunity to do whatever I could in ways.
Yeah, your journey was much more challenging, I think, because
Oh,
you told that
it's
security.
a lot risk. Like constantly
Absolutely, since you move from here and there,
yes.
so basically there is a security issue, that because of the security issues,
Yes,
foreigners are not traveling to Pakistan.
definitely. And it's I remember in 2019, that Pakistan India something happened and we had a lot of investors coming in, and then suddenly there are no flights and the flights are canceled. Now, what do you do? What do
Right.
you do? I mean, it's like putting your life online, and we had to reschedule everything.
Everything.
And even then, I mean, we had great response and people still came, but obviously they were not 100, they were probably 75 or 60. But so you miss out on the 40, but then we've learned to tell ourselves, okay, the 60 that come are our success. So because we
Right,
didn't
absolutely.
we didn't stop.
Just considering it the situation.
Yes, oh God, it was the amount of challenges you face are just like this. You wake up one day and then you say, oh, but this happened, and you're like, okay, but this cannot happen. So as an event curator, I think my experience was very different because it was looking at the ecosystem internally. It was deep diving with the corporate sector, with the government, and it was sitting with everybody saying, what kind of dialogue do we want to put out there? So I'm very grateful to all the people who made things happen, because obviously they sponsored, and then we made sure that sponsoring does not mean that the conversation is going to be sponsored. The conversation has to be separate than the money that comes to the table. So we have to really make sure that opening the ecosystem does not mean that if you are a telco or a bank, then all you're doing is talking about your own product. What you need to do is talk about why fintech is not growing in a certain dimension. So I think that's something that I had to learn with time. And again, uh, I'm grateful to a lot of my colleagues and friends who are a lot senior than I am, who could sit with me on the table and say, hey, don't do it like this and do it like this. So I think you need a lot of seniority to pull. You
On the
can do
string.
it on your own. Yes, you have to have very, very senior members of the ecosystem, board of directors to make things happen. I mean, with the government, you need a different kind of power, and with the corporate sector, you need different, and with private equity, you need different. So you actually need a lot of access to, you know,
You're
uh,
right.
healthy individuals.
Access is important because the
Yeah.
ecosystem, basically, if you want to develop, obviously the government support is required, and
Mhm.
also support from private sector is also required,
Yes,
because you know
100%
that
do it without them.
corporate sectors are also big buyer.
Definitely.
Big buyer. So if the corporate sector help the young entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
then it is very easy to establish the startups.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think the corporate sector tried doing its own bit, and I think a lot of tech companies looking at them also jumped in and said, so like I was saying that Lahore-based tech companies are serving a lot of US-based firms and European firms. So people in Karachi hadn't even heard of them, and people, companies based in Islamabad, again, Lahoris and Karachis hadn't heard of them. So if you're building a national event and if you're building a national ecosystem, then your responsibility also stretches to how you're making sure that all of them get their representation, and then gender representation, and then and then the team. The biggest challenge was that I didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have any money, so my founders were like, okay, we'll support you, but you have to put together a show. And so what I did was I said, okay, let's pick people from all these cities who are working and who are entrepreneurs, and let's make them our team and give each other work. And that's how we kind of pulled a great team that so everybody was doing their own thing. It's not like me saying, let me tell you what to do. It was like everybody telling me, hey Sana, we need to do this, and I was like, fantastic. So I think as
Empowerment.
is very important that if you talk about the ecosystem, you make sure you put all the puzzles together. And even then I felt like um, people will say all kinds of things. Some of them will say, hey, you did a great job, and some of them be like, oh my God, but why didn't you do this? So you have to be very ready for all kind of
All kinds of criticism.
yes, yes, and sometimes I remember one time I got really sad about a comment that came from somebody, and I went to my senior and I told him, I said, like this guy has never done anything, and then he just suddenly wakes up and writes this agenda on social media and etc etc. And then my boss said something that stuck to me, and he said, why does it matter when you do what you do with clarity and intention? Why does it matter what the other person is saying? They're saying, let them say. You can't stop the whole world, and you can't look at what other people are saying. Look at why you're bringing Amazons and Facebooks and Google, and how they're planning to station themselves. Look at that part, start selling that part. So I
In
think,
in
yeah.
that particular case, yeah. So I heard one day a guy was sharing his experience. So he mentioned that we need to have a skin of a rhino. So
Yeah,
it will be so difficult to go through our skin, that criticisms.
yeah.
So yeah, that's the problem.
You
So
have to
come to
Yeah, you have to be ready for it.
yeah,
Get a lot of appreciation also. I mean,
yeah.
people will, oh my God, you, wow, wow, it's like you were everywhere. So, I mean, it's
The
only
people are
fair that a lot of people.
yeah.
Right. People
So
actually have different taste, different thought process. Basically, all the people will love the entrepreneurs. It's not like that. But whenever the entrepreneur will
Yeah,
become successful, all the people will praise. Oh,
oh,
he
he
did
did good.
a job.
yeah, yeah. Then everybody loves it. So
Then
I
it's
find it so interesting when it comes about, when the stage is ready and it looks really glamorous, then
right.
everybody wants to be. Then everybody wants a piece on the stage. Then everybody wants stage time. Then everybody is calling you and saying, hey, where's my
Thank
ticket?
you.
And 3 months before, everybody's like, oh, okay, we'll see. So what I learned was that, you have to continue with what you're doing, because what you're doing is right. It is right, and it makes a lot of sense. And that's why a lot of people want to be there. But whatever they're saying is noise, and you have to learn to filter it with time. So as a
Exactly.
woman, and as somebody who's, I had to teach myself this, and I'm very grateful to, again, my male colleagues, and to have given me this opportunity to make a lot of decisions on my own. But I had to constantly learn and update and upgrade myself and say,
Myself, yeah.
hey,
Right.
this, you
Continuous
have to
value
learn.
addition, actually.
Yes, you have
Valuation,
to, otherwise.
value addition is required for an entrepreneur. Every single moment should be given highly value for learning.
Definitely. And I think that what we need to, with regards to women, is give them confidence of decision making, particularly when it comes to boards, or like sometimes you put women in power positions, but you don't really give them the power.
Power.
So
You're right.
and I had to also learn that nobody really gives you the power. You have to own up your own power also. Like, you have to say things. I mean, nobody's really stopping you from saying. Nobody's really saying, hey, don't say that. Maybe the environment is not always too friendly for you, but you have to come out of your own cage and, your mental barrier, and say, but I'm sitting here for a reason. So if I'm sitting here, this is not a gender table. This is me talking to another person.
You're right.
And I think, as a woman, I want to say this to all the girls, that we have to start looking at work also like that. That yes, we are women, and then a lot of things are not so easy. When it comes to culture and household and a lot of responsibility. But when it comes to being on the table, when you're on the table, then you have to own up, and you have to say, this is who I am, and I'm going to get this done. And nobody says
Right.
anything. And I think this comes with time, but I'm very grateful to my colleagues for that. I think they've done a fantastic job.
Great. After all the discussions and your journey, listen to your journeys, there's a very, I think, a very sensitive part, or very crucial part, which is how what what are the like the gaps in your community or in a society that actually played the part as a hindrance, like to create a environment of entrepreneurship, and how did you find the challenge and how did you overcome it?
Right.
Okay, so I think
Or
everyone
what
shared
actually I'm trying to say, like
it.
what did you do to like create a.
Pakistan, and when I was growing up and when I did my graduation, the
Yeah, please carry on.
something happened between in the internet. It said unstable, so I
No,
lost
it's
you.
okay, please do continue.
Yeah. So you said gaps, right? So
Yeah.
I think I was what I was trying to say was that when I did my undergrad 2005, the market was booming. We had a lot of investment, a lot of foreign investments, a lot of work available in the market, and very well paid jobs. So we, as an undergrad, got were really well paid. And then suddenly, the security wave changed everything. So it had mentally put us in a very difficult position. A lot of people had moved out of Pakistan. So those who were in Pakistan were purely out of passion. People like me who said, "Okay, we have to get things done." So I think the first gap was to identify um, what is happening in the world, and why is it happening there and why is it not happening here. So with academia, that helped me understand that, okay, academia elsewhere is playing a fantastic role. Why is it that we're not playing it? So then academia is the first player in the ecosystem to like start doing something. And I think that helped. And then again, like when it comes to putting the country on the map or being out there, I think marketing was a huge gap for Pakistan's tech economy or for startups, saying,
Right.
"Hey, we do exist, but look at us, and we're not like, we're not all terrorists." That gap had to be filled with different injections, and it had Botox and whatnot. So we needed events, and we needed consistent activity and consistent PR building, consistent PR
Promoting the positivity, like positive words regarding to change the
travel,
minds. Yeah.
exchange programs. So I think our incubation kind of played a good role also, because they were constantly talking about Pakistan. And at least, like I said, we needed to open ourselves to the world, and we need to open ourselves to our local ecosystem. This was a huge gap. Previously, if you wanted to do something, where would you go and pitch? So at
Right.
least, these avenues were suddenly appearing where you could go and pitch and get feedback, and then whatever you do with it is the later part of it. So I don't want to deep dive into it, but I do think that it cleared a lot of confusion for a lot of people, and it gave a lot of people the opportunity to do a lot more. And so I think for us, and then the third gap was the funding gap and the policy gap, which I think we're still fighting with, like the laws, the regulation,
Fundings.
the state bank rules are not so easy to change. We still don't have PayPal. We still don't have a lot of payment mechanisms were not so easy. So even if you are doing a startup and it's fantastic, you're stationing it in Pakistan and registering it in Pakistan, is a different value system compared to registering it in, maybe Singapore or US.
Right.
So, it was that was a little difficult, because that was for all of us to understand that, okay, it could be a great Pakistani startup, but maybe, the in the best of their interest, they should not get registered here, because it's just not going to help. But I think the laws are changing. In the last 2 years, the government has done some amazing changes, and it's going to bring in more revenue, it's going to bring in more capital, more expats are going to put money, and we'll also see a lot of structured venture capital, hopefully. So these gaps have existed, and they still exist. I mean, there's a huge gap in putting in money and a lot of private equity money is still not being moved to tech. So it's very interesting. It still goes to real estate. It still goes to um, uh,
Other profitable business.
yes. So we I guess that's a cultural change that's going to come with time, and the second, third generations of typical middle class businesses, or that's not the correct word. I mean, the second, third generations of family businesses will probably, be more experimental and will be out there, and I think they've started doing that, but it's a long way to go. It can't happen all of a sudden. But we definitely need an accelerated pace. And with COVID, I think some good things have happened. Like I said,
Right.
e-commerce and delivery businesses have done, I mean, fantastic. If you check Google's report, you'll find some very interesting trends. And then the gaps, and again with respect to women, and we're still struggling with the lingo factor. Like things like women-owned businesses or women-led businesses. So the policies kind of remain confused around this lingo, which is why even if the money comes in, sometimes it doesn't get utilized because we don't know what this lingo means, and who is it addressing. And I think we need to all simplify this because we just want more inclusion. So why should lingo not play that role? So I think these challenges are something we have to consistently work towards. We still don't have a particular database of female entrepreneurs, again particularly because of the lingo. Who will make it, who will store it? Database of small businesses, database of, so the databases are not being, and that's my problem. It has always bothered me. Who is the manager of the database? Who updates it? Is it the government? Is it the private bodies? They do their own bit, but
Right.
are they doing their bit? So I think these are some things that you could also look at, because I'm assuming that the challenges are pretty much the same, but maybe you're uh, you know evolved in some ways. And yeah, so I think if you put it all together, it's a mix of things where, you know, some days it's great and some days it's just like, oh God, it's and then the ease of doing business, and with Pakistan
Yes.
stuck in
Is of doing business actually? What is the ranking? May we know?
the
Ranking of
we're
Pakistan?
still in the gray list, so we're not completely out of FATF, and that's still a challenge for Pakistan. We've jumped the ranking. We were really literally the second lowest in either doing business in the last, I think, 2-3 years. Previously, I should have.
Yeah, yeah. Last year it was the result was published in last year.
Yeah. So you could, I mean, they're available on Google. So again, I don't want to misquote anything, but we've jumped the index twice in the last 2-3 years, and with a heavy number. So there's a lot of work being done on it, and it makes me very happy. But obviously, it requires a lot of consistency, and it requires a lot more work and
No, obviously,
certain
obviously.
pace. So I think we're doing things, but we have to keep doing them, and we can't really say that, oh, we've done it all. We
Yeah.
have we just have to keep
Yeah.
doing them. It's a lot to do. So
The same question, basically, I would like to ask to our session chair, Mr. Aman. In the perspective of Bangladesh, can you share the same factors like Ms. Sana?
Yeah. You know that Bangladesh is basically very, very aggressive countries in terms of economic development. You see, the economic growth for last couple of years, we are basically growing at the rate of 7%. It's a huge growth in the South Asia, among the South Asian countries. So this is basically has become possible because of the strong leadership by the government and by the prime minister, and as well as the people, the power of young generation. You will see the social media, what we see every day. The young generation, young people basically are very aggressive, and they are trying to uh, uh, get success basically they have become very crazy. You see, they have become very crazy, and entrepreneurship once upon a time it was actually not highly appreciated, but for last 3 to 2 years you will see that government is also helping through ATY, Bangladesh Investment Board, and the lots of educational institute are also working to develop entrepreneurship, and the ecosystem what Sana was saying. uh, Already we have been able to develop a very good entrepreneurial ecosystem, where you will see that last 15 years we don't see any hartal or like hartal, and any blockade like that. You see that businesses are open, and in COVID situation, whenever the shops were closed, they have shifted their business. They have changed their mode of operation. They have become online business, and they are delivering goods through online channel. And you see that if I can remember, 6 months back, actually I was looking for some food delivery channel. At that time it was not available. Patha was not taking any food, but you see, just within last 6 months, the young people has made it possible that more than 50 delivery, uh, basically delivery delivery startups has come out, and they are now helping the food and other producers just to help their deliveries. That you see, currently the Facebook as well as the social media, other tools of social media being highly used to uh, promote actually products. You will see lots of groups, we, then DU entrepreneurs, then SED marketplace. These are the basically marketplaces
Yeah.
where our young peoples are getting access to promote their products even without any cost.
Yeah.
Though Sana was saying that marketing is very challenging, very costly in South Asian countries. Not only in South Asian countries, it is also a truth for the world also.
Yeah.
But in Bangladesh, you will see that lots of groups who are basically helping others to develop their
That.
friends ventures and their relatives ventures. Whenever we come to learn that our friends and our colleagues have a venture, then obviously we try to
Buy from them.
try to buy from our kids and
That.
friends and family members. So this is an important thing, that a positive change is being happened. You see,
That's
the
fantastic.
positive change is being happened, and the ecosystem, basically you know that we are basically very young nations, and our infrastructure was not so updated developed, but by this time we have been able to develop, and we are very aggressive. Basically, though we are learning for western countries to some extent, we are doing excellent
Mm.
just compared to the first world countries in very in many areas. In Bangladesh, you will see that the growth perspective compared to our neighboring countries, India, you say, as in startups also, you will say the lots of startups, and young people are basically every day creating new ventures and like this. So it's excellent and satisfactory, I think.
Fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. I think what you've said makes a lot of sense. That one thing is that COVID has definitely added a lot of empathy, and we've all kind of wanted to contribute. But I do think that the Bangladesh ecosystem as a culture has that edge in some ways, and I love that, and I think we should use that as case study with each other and say,
That
you know,
was
Sure,
that
sure.
was that was I was that was the thing I was thinking about. Like going forward, like we will organize some few sessions for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and we can also create something as in a blog, sharing the case studies, like how we are overcoming some obstacles, and if there is a success story, we can put that in as a case.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be a great thing to do. So yeah, we have the time limitation. It's I think yeah,
Yay.
it should be
Oh,
a
I didn't even realize the time finished.
Right, right.
so
It was a
that
wonderful session. Actually, we are enjoying your.
I was enjoying listening. I think I was talking more, and I then felt like, oh my God, am I talking more? What am I
no
doing?
no no that was
No,
a
no, no.
good thing.
You are just sharing your experiences. We learned a lot of things based
Uh,
on your
I'm
cultures,
grateful, and
perspective.
thank you for asking me very pertinent questions. I'm sorry I wasn't updated exactly on the right figures, so I didn't want to misquote anything, and didn't
Oh,
want
no, no, no.
No, it's totally okay. We understand.
to.
We
So
understand the scenarios.
thank you.
Thank you so much for the insightful session. It was really very informative also, and I hope our audience they have learned today different things, because this is kind of a like a research findings, something like that.
Yeah,
The things we have been sharing
I
through.
try
Yeah,
to just highlight those that could help people in some way, and not
yeah.
like
No, no,
otherwise
this
it's
is kind of case scenarios sharing session. It can be, because like whatever it is, the thing from your side is you keep doing it. The thing is which is similar. I can find a similarity between you and us is you have been keep going.
Right.
Like doing it, whatever there is a challenge. And we know how it is very difficult for women to like shifting towards the change. So
yeah.
that we'd like to like acknowledge that you're doing really great, and you have a very busy schedule, and
Right.
you have shared a very informative 1 hour with us, and we're really grateful to you. On behalf of School of Entrepreneurship Development, I would like to share my gratitude towards you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful, and for all the respect that you've given me. And I actually shut down from social media apart from sharing maybe a selfie once or twice. I, I haven't been too active, and I wasn't talking too much. And then suddenly, when you said, I said, okay, maybe this is time. Maybe this time for me to
Come
come.
forward and
So you're
sharing.
the first person I've done a meetup with in maybe a year. Yeah. So that's why my excitement was a little too much.
No,
So
that's true. I just want to add something with you. And we before our session we try to interview people how to design our session. There is one person who actually shared the same thing, that she was diverted in a different path, and because of our approach towards her, like she her like spirituality awaked, and she was like, okay, yeah, yeah, I
I
need to do it. Yeah. And that is the like inspiring part for us. We try to implant positive news, implant positivity around our country, around our society, around our community about entrepreneurship, so people somehow will understand. It's like like a communication, the marketing part. So it's
yeah,
like like we need to put positive stories.
definitely.
Like if someone fails, it's okay. So we're trying to do that through us. And the thing that you said once mentioned, like in your discussion, there is no like the database or marketing research or any research activities before launching the product or service or solution, that we amalgamate all the solutions, all the services, all in our School of Entrepreneurship Development. We have like a research team uh, who actually like publish a research book, global research book publication we have. So we try to like promote business, entrepreneurship, economics, innovation. So we have all the thing, and we believe that if we can like execute it, execute those that we dream about successfully, we will be a very big part of creating an impactful knowledge economy.
Definitely.
All right.
thank you so much once again, and I'm grateful, and I learned a lot from your experiences, and I hope that somewhere we.
Yeah, we will collaborate in future, hopefully.
And, thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good night,
Yeah, thank
and
you.
thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you,
Aman,
Sana.
for your valuable time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay well.
Okay. Good night.